I mean, you two have known each other the longest.
We have. Irene and I have known each other for a really long time. Probably since 2015, 2016, I want to say. We all went to University of Houston. Irene and I did our undergrad there. Jamie did her graduate degree there.
I also did undergrad there too.
Oh, Jamie, we all did undergrad. I thought you did your undergrad in Florida.
Oh no, that was my other grad
Girl.
school.
You did grad school twice?
I did grad school twice.
What's wrong with you?
When did the third time?
I got talked into the second time. So
By Delilah.
it just kind of happened. Yeah, it just kind of happened that way. But I'm glad I went because then I wouldn't have met y'all.
Oh.
I think Irene and I both have like really big personalities and they engage in different ways. But I feel like we would have kind of like been led to each other at a certain point, just because of the work that we do. Because I was working with the archive when I was an undergrad.
Yes.
Really the common thread outside of the archive is the family dynamic.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of made it to each other by working about family, especially in the South.
Yeah, and I had always been really interested in making work about my family, like just maybe like the past 10 years, but wasn't really sure how all of that was going to form or take root. I started thinking like, oh, just do more like genealogical research and trying to piece together a family tree, or going through photo albums. And I think that I was always trying to find myself in those albums, like not necessarily like, oh, here's a baby picture of me, but like I look like this person, or I have this person's eyes or this person's nose. Like always trying to find some version of myself in all of the past people who made up me. And so it just, I think, I don't know, I've just always really been family oriented, even before I was an artist.
I'll go off that statement. Yeah, I think I've also, most of my work from like the start, like I started photographing when I was in 10th grade in high school. I think I took my first darkroom class, and before that I was the person in my family who would like attempt to take those like disposable cameras and get yelled at for like wasting the pictures, but like would take photos of my family. And it kind of just continued to be that. With this piece, the piece behind me, which is To View an Open Casket, the photograph is an image of my brother who passed away when he was 2, so I didn't get to meet him. Mm-hmm. But there's always been this connection between like a family member that you only get to see in a photograph or hear stories about. And so there's maybe 3 photos of him, and this is the photo that's on his obituary. And so I became really interested in him as a person. It gets talked about like what would he be doing today. His birthday was on Valentine's Day, so it becomes this like very yearly reminder. And so I started working with that print, and it's something that it's one of the only prints of someone that has passed on that is not buried. And so it's kind of this thin line between like memorial and like destruction, and thinking about in my family and all of our family like funeral grounds and things like that. They're become overgrown now, just because people have passed on. The people that are taking care of these places are no longer like with us or can't take care of them because they've gotten older. And so the dirt becomes this like symbolism for the first handful that's thrown in the casket, and all of the items are the discarded things from funerals. And so like every object that's in this is like either from a family cemetery or from a family member's home. And so it's really an idealization to memorialize someone that I didn't get to meet.
I'm thinking about like the cemetery and the dirt, and I had started photographing cemeteries from the area where my family is from. Of course, they're like the colored only cemeteries, and I also have those worries about whether or not they're going to be cared for in the end, because I hope to be buried there, right? Because like hundreds of years of my people are in that land. And so for me, that has like a lot of power, and that they're all in this one place together. And so, some of the cemeteries, of course, like are well cared for. Some of them, you need some like really long boots, something to go in there for snakes or wild boars or whatever that's there, because it's just not as cared for. But in thinking about like the work for this exhibition, I knew that I wanted to have some of the gravestones that I've found or photographed over time because to me, a cemetery also is kind of like it's maybe weird, like a library in a sense, like a library of death, which maybe sounds a little morbid, but like for me to walk through a cemetery and see all these names of people, maybe I never knew them, I never even saw photographs of them, but to know that this is my grandfather's aunt, or this is my great-grandfather, or this is my great-grandfather's grandfather, which his headstone is in this exhibition. Like, it means a lot. And to me, I also like started collecting like little bits of the soil from the graves as well, which, you know, different cultures have different feelings about collecting grave dirt, right? Because it could be seen as like you're gonna do some kind of like witchcraft or something with it. But for me, it was more like there's still a part of them in that soil, and me wanting to take a part of them with me when I left, because I never got to know them. And I feel, I guess, such a connection with particularly my great-grandfather, because the thing was, my mom went to see him in a hospital in February of 1988. She didn't know she was pregnant with me at the time. And she thought, like, you know, he was gonna be fine, and like, you know, everything was gonna, you know, that he was just in there for some kind of routine thing. So they go, you know, she goes to visit him, they're having a great time, they're laughing, they're talking. And then, you know, she leaves, and then maybe a couple of days later, he passes away. And so to me, she's often talked about that story in regards to like how her not knowing that she was pregnant with me, but I'm still present in that room with them. And so like, it just seems like me and him are always out of time together. Like, he's in the time of death, I'm in the time of pre-birth, and we keep like, we've missed each other a couple of times. And so, you know, looking for his grave, trying to find his house, because I hadn't seen his house. I don't think I've ever seen it in my life. But I don't know, I have no memories of ever seeing it. And so searching for it and looking for it, I don't know, it made me feel like he was still there in some ways. And I really do think he is. And I think that's, I guess, why I'm so interested in the landscape and also in my own family archives and documenting the landscape, because to me, it's not just a photograph of a tree or dirt. There's spirits there.
There's like an aura that like calls you to that place that you have a connection to.
Yeah.
So you like want to engage with it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know, for planning for this show, I was a little all over the place a little bit. And I was trying to make sure, because I had another show, I was trying to make sure I didn't repeat things, because I feel like I have like years of images, and like trying to sort through all of them and see what's working and what's not, and like what'll fit within this show. It was challenging, but I'm really happy with how everything came together, especially the video piece that I added kind of not necessarily last minute, but that video is like from 10 years ago. And I just recorded it because it felt like something important to document. I didn't know what I was gonna do with it. And it was only like 30 seconds, like the clip itself, but I, you know, have manipulated it to where it's now like 4 minutes of just constant dusting, sweeping the grave of my grandfather that my grandmother is doing.
I really I think the video, I like you said, it's not like something that was added last minute or something like that, but I feel like it was like this missing thing that we didn't have. Yeah, like it ties it together. Like I think that it's a good in-between spot of like all of the work. Like I feel like there's the connection, there's a big connection of like the funeral practices, and then there's like Irene has this really huge church element that like I feel like our work is like a little removed from that in terms of being literal images inside of a church. And this feels like a bridge of that for me.
Yeah. I really love the images of the church like different sororities and fraternities, and for instance, like looking through and like trying to figure out which groups they belong to. So I remember the first time I saw, I think, the image that has like the flowers at the bottom, and I remember recognizing like one of the women was wearing like a star on her hat, and I was like, oh, some of these women are probably in the Order of the Eastern Star. And I think maybe you found out that was true later.
Because my granny could name some of the people in the photo. I don't know how old that photograph is, but it's in my dad's childhood church's archives in Conroe, Texas. And it was just collecting dust. And so my practice, I don't know if that's from my mom's side of the family, where like when you bring images out, it's almost like you're bringing them back to life because you're recognizing them. And so that's why I've been going through like my archives, because I'm also learning like how you're examining your family archives. I'm learning things about myself. I'm learning things about what my father was like as a kid, what my grandfather was like. There's like images of like children and people from like a great cousin of ours. Her images were like thrown in a ditch, and so my dad just took them, and so I repurposed them and used them to like, you know, signify like celebrating Black lives and protecting Black lives. Yeah, it's a lot. It's emotional work. I feel like my work is always in progress. Like it's never complete.
You're truly a painter.
Am I?
It stays on the wall and then it's not done. It's just sitting there until
Because
I'm
I'll
ready.
take shit out. I'm like, because they're like, oh, where is this print? I'm like, oh, it's not in circulation anymore. I don't want to show out that print anymore.
It's not in circulation.
Yeah, I take stuff off in like a
That should be
series
like a section
all
on
the
your
time.
website. No
It
longer.
is. No, I put like my series is forever growing, but like, yeah, like stuff, I'll take stuff off. Because a curator will like screenshot it and say, where is this? It's not on your website anymore. I'm like, no, I don't show that. I'm at peace with it.
And does that mean it's finished? Or like if it's not in circulation anymore, is it finished for you or is it just not going to be shown?
It's finished at that moment in my life, like how I feel about that image. And then I'll revisit it again if I feel a certain way, like, oh, I want the image back. Then
I
I'll
feel
put it
like
back.
it's difficult to make finished work in the way that we work. I'm also struggling with that where it's like, this looked completely different before. Like the flowers were not in front of the face. Like there was not as big as a dirt pile. It also wasn't on a wall.
No, you can walk around it.
And all the items were in the dirt. And so it's like, I feel like it just is something that I don't want to necessarily say it's not finished, but it's not something that is like gonna be a completely different thing every time.
It evolves.
And so I would agree, but I don't know if I can say it's not finished. I feel like that would make me feel like I gotta work.
I feel like
Because curators will ask, like, oh, is this finished work? I'm like, I never have finished work.
But the thing is, like, I don't think it has to be finished
Or
right?
completed.
or completed, because that's like an old school way of thinking about.
Capitalism. That's what that
We are
is.
anti-capitalist here.
But like, I think that's like an old school way of thinking about like art as an object. It's done. It's on the wall. It's on the pedestal. But like, we're really thinking conceptually about these things, and so as we grow, the pieces are going to grow with us.
Curators hate when I say that. I say that all the
What's
time.
that?
I'm like, my work is like an entity that is growing with me, and it's going to continue. Yeah.
I think that the framework really though about things being finished and not finished is just based on how sellable they are.
Exactly.
And so like if you say something isn't finished, then in theory like a curator can't sell it because that means that you could make another one and it'll be different, and then the value of what
It
you
will be
sold them
different.
is less. And so like I was talking to one of my mentors the other day, and he was like, you really should start selling work. And I was like, I don't not sell work because I can't. Like I choose not to sell
my
anything. Like I
mindset.
just
Yeah.
don't think anyone should own it.
Yeah.
You
My
know?
black archive, just selling a black image, like
People ask all the time, and I'm like, you can be in a catalog and you sell the catalog, but like
the
I don't
actual
think anyone
work?
needs a 15-foot print of my deceased brother. Like I don't think anyone needs to have that.
No.
Like, I
Because
just-
how do you even, like, if someone has that in their home, like, how do they even talk about that? They can't.
like that print of my great aunt Vicey, like the tint.
yeah.
Everyone wants that print. And I'm like, why you want that image? Like she used to be a slave. Like, like why you want that image for? I know why you want
There's
that image.
reasons.
I know why you want that image. There's always
if we
white
need to tell the
collectors
reason right now.
Yeah, there's always white collectors that want it. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, this work is for black folks only. Like I'm centering black people. Y'all can enter the space, but it's not made for you. It's made for
And
my
then we
community.
got trust issues because if a black person buys it, they might sell it again.
Yes!
And this part might be shown. Like I have a big rule, like in the films that I make, where I'm like, this can't be shown if there ain't no other black people in the show. I was like, I don't want to make films about blackness and black people and black bodies at rest and things like that. And then it's the only thing that you have in the space. Like it's not okay with me. And that became one of the biggest reasons why I didn't want to sell things. Like, I was like, especially not like moving image. I'm like, because it's easy to have your whole show done and be like, oh, I need something else. Let's put this 30-minute film of black people in the desert. I'm like, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Irene.
No, I mean, this is my last show, by the way. But that's why I kept pulling work and shows in Houston, because I would be the only black person in that show. And I'm like, my work cannot exist in this space. If anything, it's gonna endure some sort of violence. So I just would pull. What?
No, because you're talking about like your work enduring violence, and like on the opening night with the salt, like already.
I knew that was gonna happen.
It was already like someone had kicked it.
It was that, and like invading space with the the communion wafers. They're police brutality victims, and I have on the top part the 16th Baptist church bombing victims, and like people were like hunching over because they wanted to see all the like details in the face, and it just felt like they were disturbing because it's a memorial, and they were like disturbing it. I did the wafers because it's to canonize all those people, to remember them, to create them as saints and talk about how black, folks are sacred. Which people were all up in arms that I did that, because that's also the body of Christ, and how Jesus is sacrificing himself. Black folks are being sacrificed on a day-to-day basis. They don't like it when you do something political.
Or I guess maybe controversial, but
I don't think it's controversial.
I don't feel like it is either.
I think it can be both.
You think it could be both?
Yeah, I think controversy is one of those things that's subjective, So like it's like I can see how can be controversial.
Your piece?
I can see that, yeah. Like it's like taking an obituary photograph and then gilding it, and then taking items from family graveyards that have been discarded and placing it in. Like I can see where there could be a controversy about it, but again, it's a subjective thing because we have all of our own viewpoints about it. It's like I personally don't think there's anything wrong with what you did at all.
My mom felt a certain type of way at first because she's Catholic, and so she was trying to understand why I was putting faces on the wafer.
It's a holy body.
Because to be honest, when I first started this whole series, I was first just going to do about Christianity and how it was used as a tool, like, to control during the slave trade. And I'm like, ooh, this is too heavy. It's too,
too heavy.
Yes, I was like, ooh, this is too, because I started reading articles and all the things that I was just like, I can't, I would just get sick, like reading stuff. And I'm like, I want to make work that I feel good. When I make it. So, because I don't want to do any work that I feel tired after I make it.
Yeah.
Because I used to do that. I would make work and I'm like, I'm exhausted.
But some people think they have to suffer for their art. And I don't really think you have to. Y'all looking at me like maybe you should.
I suffered physically.
You need to suffer more.
I suffered physically making it.
Yeah.
And the install, of course, yeah. But suffering mentally, like preparing it, researching it, like all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. I cried. Like I cried when I cut out each image of the victims. I think that was the most sad part for me. But other than that, that's the only thing that I suffered through, because it's just sad.
Yeah.
And I continue to add more faces as the years go on.
Honestly, it sounds, from the way things are looking, like it's a growing thing.
Yeah, it's going to continue to grow.
Get you a bigger piece of wood.
Yeah.
I don't know, I might keep it and then just switch them out, and then maybe the whole thing will get filled.
How does y'all's families respond to the work?
My dad gets sad.
He gets sad.
Yeah, because like there's a church, a choir photograph, and that's from Trinity East United Methodist in 3rd Ward. And we have my great aunt who lived with us. She was 99. And then my great aunt who lived down the street from us, and they're no longer here. And so he gets really sad when he sees the pictures, kind of like your mom, like, because he just looks at them. Like, and the outside church, his kindergarten teacher's in the photograph, and he just gets sad because now, since he's older, people are dying. And even though they're not family, Conroe was a small community at one point, and so it feels like every month he's going to someone's funeral, because my grandparents were like big community leaders, so they knew everyone. So he gets really sad, because I showed this at Galveston Art Center, and I wasn't there when he like saw the work on his own, but my mom said he cried. He cried a lot.
I'd say that my family has a similar reaction. They haven't seen a lot of my work, really. I think this is the first time they've come to a show since our BFA thesis exhibition. Like, they've been to that, and then they've been to this. And my dad actually helped me hang the print, and it was like a very slow process because he'd only seen a photograph of it, like when I installed it previously. And so they didn't understand how like big it was and things like that. And so being confronted with such a large image of like one of their kids was kind of emotional. Because I know that when Preston passed away, it was when my parents first got married. And so the first church they had been going to, they'd only been going there for a little bit. They did the whole thing for free and stuff like that. And he was shy of being 2. So it was very small still. And so I think it was kind of grand for them to see something so big when it was right when they first got together and stuff like that. And so a pretty emotional thing for them. They took a lot of pictures, which is parents do, but like for someone who hasn't had like the people that take care of them come and see something that they do, was really kind of special. And I think my mom had that kind of feeling with like all of the work. Like, she kept, when she would walk around, she would try and ask me, what does this mean? But she like had her hand on her heart the like entire time.
I remember her pointing to like the picture of my grandfather and my great grandfather, like them cleaning the hog. She was like, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's such a like common, I don't know, I guess image of like Southern, like rural, like Black culture.
Yeah, my dad got so excited when he saw your images.
Really?
Yeah, because his grandparents were farmers, and like they did things like that. And I feel like a part of him misses that, even though he moved to Houston, like, and they're gonna at one point, I feel, move back to Conroe to be like in the country. But it's just that connection. Even people that have been messaging me, they say when they walk into the space, they're like, it feels like I'm home. And it's always like Black individuals that come in.
Yeah.
Even though we all have different backgrounds, they intersect one another.
Like very much intersect too.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't shown together in so long, and it's like this has been really sweet to like come and like be in Houston and do this work with both of you, honestly. Because it's like me in New Mexico, like no one's really working with the archive or like making work like this. And so when I'm in shows, it's either like by myself or it's like in a group show that's like about home, but in a different kind of it's a different kind of context, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's been really special to be here and have work that feels like it belongs in the same room together, you know?
I agree, because all the shows I've been asked to do are like Black, like Blackness, Black theme and stuff. And I feel like we're like, when I'm asked to do those shows, some of the artists that are making work, they're doing like the generic what the white cube sees is what Black art should be. And so then I feel like my work doesn't really fit in their context right away, whereas here everything, it just blends really well together. It's harmonious.
Yeah.
It doesn't clash.
There's definitely, I do notice sometimes with like a lot of Black artists that you can either fall into this camp of like making things for a white gaze, and it just is usually something that is focused a lot on trauma,
oppression art,
oppression, or things that are meant to, I guess, show Black people's humanity or to make white people feel Black people's humanity. And I think the three of us are not necessarily interested in trying to sway a white audience in any way, shape, or form.
It's too much work.
It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work because it requires, the person has to be open to all of that. And it's a lot of personal work that they have to do first before really experiencing a work that's meant to change them in that way. I think what I liked about the three of us is that we're really interested in just like further expanding what Blackness looks like in the US, and not even just the US, but even like across, like globally within the diaspora, because there seems to be, I think with social media and like everything, there's like this flattening that's starting to happen even within our own community of this is what Black people look like, this is what they're interested in, this is what they wear, this is how their hair is, this is what they look, all of that kind of stuff that is really limiting. And also I feel like people don't realize that that's also like oppression. But to do that, to police each other in this way. And so for us to be in this space to make work about a Southern Black experience, it's not the only one, but one that looks more at the rural aspect of it, I think is really special. And it's really important. I'm really glad to be in the show with the two of you. Because I respect you both a lot.
Sure.
Like a lot. Like a lot. Like you both inspire me, like the things that y'all make. I'm serious.
You inspire me too, babe. I think also like, even I know we all inspire each other and like we all have this like huge connection. I think one of the really important elements about it is that we're lucky enough to be working with Anna.
Yeah.
Like to be able, like knowing the whole entire oppressive view of like being in a gallery and like doing work about Blackness and like all those rules, and having someone who's like took a step back and wanting to curate to like give us the opportunity to make and like put this the way that we wanted, and look at how it came out.
Absolutely.
And I think like that's a really like rare thing I've come across in showing, for sure.
That is very true, because there's always someone who's like, well, maybe you should do it this way. And that doesn't really make sense with this. And it's like, whose vision is it? Is it mine or is it yours?
Or over-explaining your work.
I'm done over-explaining.
Yeah.
I'm done. I can't do it
I'm not going to
anymore.
give you a packet about my work,
anymore.
about Black identity.
Yeah. I don't know about y'all, but I found like in grad school, I did a lot of over-explaining because I was one of like 2 Black people in my cohort or my year. And I was actually in like, the other person was in like graphic design, and they were making things about like Blackness, but they're particularly their like East African ancestry. And then I was making stuff that was like Black Southern things. And even though like the cohort itself is like diverse, it was still a struggle, because even though, yes, there's all these different people from different cultures, like sometimes they would have very much a very tunnel vision or like a haze over their eyes about what Blackness could be or what it meant, or like maybe the things I was talking about were so foreign to them. And so it was hard, because I was trying to also build my own framework for how, like internal framework of this is how I operate and what I want to show and the symbols that I'm going to use. And then also like learning this Western stuff too. So it was like always this kind of like balancing act of doing this extra work of learning these things that I want to know as a Black person in the US, but then also like contending with this is what the overall like art market is doing. This is what the college is interested in or the university is interested in. And it was frustrating at times. I don't know about y'all's experience. Well, I mean, I kind of know.
Oh my.
I don't know if y'all want to see on camera, but
Undergrad was weird for me because undergrad was very weird for me because I was being pushed to do like work about either being like biracial, and I'm like, I don't want to do work about that. Like another mixed kid trying to like be all sad because I feel like I don't fit in with either or. Like, no, I don't.
Such a narrative. That
Yes.
tragic mulatto, they love
Yes. And it was my white teacher that was pushing that on me, and I'm like, no. So I did work about my brother, and then I did work about myself. And then what changed when I started to do more work about specifically like the Black identity was when I was in France for grad school. And I'm like, because Black is not a term there. And so I was being called American a lot. And so it was like denouncing my Blackness and like not even acknowledging that I'm being treated different in like this foreign country and stuff. And so that's what made me work with my archives, because I'm like, I can't take pictures here.
Yeah.
Everything looks the same. It's like iconic. Like, how am I supposed to like actually make work here? I was the only Black person in my program. And I don't think I explained myself, which affected my grade, because I would tell people, I'm like, no, I don't have to explain. If you don't understand it, you don't understand it. There's Google. You can Google it. So I'm not gonna sit here and because they even asked me to have a definition of what is Black. What is a Black person? And I was like, whoo, I need to finish and leave.
Wow, a definition for Blackness.
Even in my thesis, like I had to put on my citations, like what actually defines someone Black, because my whole thesis research was about the disparity of Black curators in art institution and decolonizing art spaces. So yeah, I stopped explaining myself once I realized it's a lot of work. I'm tired all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just one person. I can't change the whole world.
You can't.
No, not at all.
I'd say, I mean, like, I was in New Mexico, so it's like the population in Albuquerque is like 3% Black.
Yep.
And it's just, and it's New Mexico's a weird place because it's like in the Southwest, and Texas considers to be the Southwest, but like once you're outside of Texas, like people don't consider Texas to be the Southwest or the South. It's just Texas. And so trying to like get them to understand that Texas is not just like an open range area, and that there's like actually like it's like Houston's very diverse, and like there's tons of people. Like it's a big melting pot where it's like all of these communities that have been there for so long. And so being in New Mexico, it was just like it was kind of strange. I was the only Black person in my program. There was someone that was from, I believe, South Africa. I'm not entirely sure. But they were a painter and they did abstract painting, and like that was great. But their work, they were very much in that. Like so we're not a monolith, you know. We're not all the same.
Yes.
But there are a lot of Black artists that don't make work about being Black. Like
Right.
that identity is not a part of the
Yes.
work anymore at any point. And they were that kind of artist. And so it kind of made a spotlight on me where like when I would tell people I was from Alabama. Alabama's known as the Cotton State. Like that's the logo of the state. And so anytime I made anything and it had a connection to Alabama, it was like, oh, I'm making work about slavery. Like they always thought it was about slavery. And it's less of what happened to Irene, like totally for sure. Like no one was trying to get me to define Blackness or anything like that. But the questions that the people had were always just like, what? What do you mean? What are you actually asking me, you know? And so I didn't really explain things very much. Like I did have a reason for everything. I know that I always have a reason. I was an undergrad, I was like that. I knew exactly why I was doing something. I know exactly why the baby's breath is put there and there. Like I have reasons for all the things, but I don't go any farther in explaining like a theory.
Yeah.
And so when those things kind of pop up, I'm just like, we not all the same, y'all. Like I can't, I don't know why Black people do that. Like I don't know how to answer that for you. And so it was a little weird. I love New Mexico though, and I like plan to stay there. But it was a big, huge shift. Like when I first moved to New Mexico, I did a project where I photographed the Black community. And that project started on me asking people around me, like, do you know any Black people? And them being like, just you. And I was like, all right, well, this is not gonna work for me. And it's like, I get commentary about Blackness all the time where people, like, one of the first times I at a social thing for grad school, someone came and asked me if I knew more about Civil War because I grew up in Alabama. And I was like, the Civil War? I probably know as much as you about the silver wolf. You made it an individual so instantly just because of like certain things, whether you're like Black or Latinx or like even like Asian people have this issue in grad school a lot too. Where like
you're the ambassador for your race, basically. And it's, I don't know, it's tiring. It's also, I don't know, I think my experience of it too is that very similar to you, like I would have people trying to erase the fact that I was Black, even though I would tell, like, I don't necessarily have to tell people I'm Black. I feel like my mannerisms and various things, not to be stereotypical, relate to the fact that I grew up in a Black culture, right? But I often find myself in these spaces where I'm with other people of color and they're like I can feel it. Like they've forgotten that I'm Black and they're doing this like beige person thing. And it's like, I don't know what to do with that. Like that's not,
You're brown people.
But I mean,
I feel like I'm having this conversation a lot recently.
Are you?
In my life and around like the people that I engage with, it's like especially like other Black folks and stuff like that. And this is in New Mexico we're having these conversations. And it's like realizing that like a lot of times like the people that know us that are non-Black, like we are not Black to them in the same way as like someone that's walking down the street or
That they get scared of.
Yeah, like
yeah. But it's true. Like
it's true.
Whatever the stereotypes or like unconscious bias they have about Black people in their minds, they're like, I know this person. I'm not projected. That doesn't get projected onto you.
It's like they have the stereotype of them knowing Black people, like actually knowing someone who's Black versus seeing someone who's Black is like very far away from them.
Yes.
Like it's just like your whole identity is erased because I know Jamie likes to photograph and Jamie lives in Humble and like all this stuff. So Jamie doesn't count the same way as the people in like this area.
But I'm gonna ask Jamie to be in a show because I need more Black people
like it's
in that show.
Yeah, it's like they're gonna be more mutable to like what I need because I know a little bit more about Jamie versus like cold calling someone who is actually doing work that would actually fit in the space with what the work is that they want to do.
We haven't talked about how we even came up with the idea for this exhibition.
I feel like this show kind of came together because I think we were all like, there was a group chat on Instagram. We had a group chat on Instagram that Colby made and then left. That was called the thesis the thesis you deserve or something like that. Because we were all in school during
Trauma.
when the pandemic had to cancel everything and we're supposed to be having our thesis shows.
Trauma.
And for some reason, it just like actually became. It started off as like a playful conversation, but then we were like, we should just submit it things.
Yeah.
And then we like met like via Zoom because it was pandemic, and
we got in. Well, we gotta do a show now.
it was such a thought baby, like for sure. Like I don't think anyone was really expecting anything like conceptualized from it. Like it would have been great if it happened, but we were also like, this will just be good to do.
Yeah, it's a good exercise, writing an exhibition proposal.
And then we submitted to Lawndale, and I think that it like didn't get selected, I believe. And then later on, Anna was like, "Oh, but I still want to like try and figure out how to like have a show with y'all. Like we really like the proposal, things like that." And then here we are. Like, what was that, like a year and a half ago? That was a long time ago.
It was.
It was that long ago?
It was a year and a half
It felt like
ago.
last year to me.
It was a while because we started, I think, writing the exhibition proposal in like fall of 2020, and we heard back from Lawndale
now
in spring of 2021. And so it's been that whole year of like planning and figuring things out. I feel like you two of you knew immediately what y'all were gonna put in the show.
I mean, I had just installed this.
Right.
This was it had just been installed, and since it was the pandemic, and I was glad I was able to install it in Albuquerque, but there were a lot of people who like had been planning to come to see the show that were here, and the pandemic made that a lot harder. Yeah. And so it was like, I want to show this in Houston. And I had the thought when I made it, because this is my thesis work, I was like, thesis work doesn't get shown again. Just make the thing to graduate,
But mine is thesis too.
I since have not graduated. I'm still showing my thesis work. And I think that's really, because we like pulled images, and then I think you had like different stuff. Like I want to say that
completely different stuff.
That stuff that we wrote to have, like none of that is really here. Like maybe an image
Not even.
No, because you had the hog one. That was on there. Everything else?
No.
You're like,
New.
surprise. Surprise.
It's such a beautiful space of like all of this work from the three of us, especially since we're all from like different areas. Like, yeah, Alabama, like Houston, and also Houston as well, but like a real big like connection to Centerville or Centerville?
Centerville.
Centerville?
Centerville.
And there's they're geographically like not very super close together, but these common like lines. And I think it'd be like really great if people that did come in here would be able to like understand the importance of like their archives, as well as the practices and traditions of their family within like the church or around funerals. I think that there's this big connection there in all of this work, and I think that would be something really beautiful for everyone to kind of take away, is like having there's a lot of gentle moments in here, and that I want that gentleness to be carried on the way out. Like even from seeing the title or like the pamphlet that looks like an obituary to us, and there's all these little details and like moments that I really want that gentleness to be this huge takeaway for everyone.
To my kin, to my Black kin, this is made for you. Celebrate, you can cry, express yourself however you feel in this space. I want you to feel safe in this space. I want you to feel like you belong here. I guess that's the biggest takeaway for me.
I think for me, I want for people to get a better sense of the nuance in Blackness and how, there isn't just this one kind of type of Black person or Black experience. Fluidity. That, Houston is such a special city because I've always thought of it is that you have Black people from the country and Black people from the city living in unison together, right? Like there's like trail rides in my grandmother's neighborhood, right? And this is coming from like a rural thing that you're keeping up in the city. And so I would really hope that people can get a better sense of just the wholeness that is Black culture, the wholeness of Black people in the South, and even more like the wholeness of Black people who come from the rural South for me.